When we picture a psychopathic killer, we often imagine a visibly deranged monster. The reality is far more dangerous. True psychopaths seamlessly blend into society as successful doctors, high-level executives, and charming neighbors. They hide behind what clinical psychologists call a mask of sanity. This is a meticulously constructed, superficial facade that allows individuals who completely lack human empathy to mimic normal emotional responses. Looking at this grid, you can see the true scale of the threat. Approximately 1% of the general population possesses psychopathic traits. These individuals walk among us, armed with extreme glibness and an aggressively inflated sense of self-worth. This mask is effective because it exploits our hardwired social biases. Most of us are biologically tuned to interpret confidence as competence and politeness as safety. By mimicking the exact social signals we use to grant trust, the psychopath turns our very desire for human connection into a psychological blind spot. Because these predators are unspottable by design, your everyday survival instincts will fail against them. To recognize them, we have to look past the surface and examine the cold psychological machinery running underneath. This presents a massive problem for criminologists. When a killer is finally caught and placed in a secure cell, investigators face the impossible task of extracting the truth from a subject whose entire existence relies on pathological lying. Traditional interrogations rely on a suspect having a conscience. Detectives press on a criminal's feelings of guilt and remorse until they crack. But psychopaths possess zero conscience, making guilt-based questioning completely useless. Attempting to appeal to a psychopath's better nature is actively dangerous. Because they lack normal emotional ranges, they view your empathy not as a bridge for connection, but as a glaring weakness to be exploited. Investigators quickly learn that they cannot appeal to a killer's humanity to get a confession. Instead, they must learn to weaponize the killer's own pathology against them. To break through, behavioral experts employ a specialized interrogation tactic known as marketing psychology. Rather than treating the killer as a criminal suspect, the investigator treats the killer's ego as a customer to be sold to. The psychopath suffers from aggressive narcissism. Despite an arrogant, domineering exterior, their self-esteem is incredibly fragile. It relies entirely on constant external admiration and validation to survive. Investigators reverse engineer this specific vulnerability. They heavily flatter the killer, ask for their advice, and stroke their overinflated egos to make them feel like brilliant peers rather than captured monsters. This chart illustrates a massive internal discrepancy. The killer struggles to balance the heavy weight of their grand delusions, their ideal self, against a fragile actual self. When investigators provide missing validation, external flattery props up those delusions. Feeling validated, the killer confesses. The investigator must temporarily feed the monster's delusions. It requires walking a toxic psychological line simply to extract critical data and solve open cases. Not all killers maintain the composure of a calculated psychopath. Some cross the line into what criminologists classify as the savage, the point where calculated manipulation degrades into uninhibited, brutal violence. Savagery isn't a clinical medical diagnosis. It is an animalistic, willful disregard for the basic rules, laws, and boundaries that govern modern society. Engaging with these deeply perverted minds requires extreme countermeasures. Behavioral science experts at institutions like the FBI Academy have developed highly unconventional tactics to communicate with suspects outside normal social frameworks. When corresponding with these killers in prison, investigators often use a multi-sensory approach. They might spray a letter with a specific, expensive cologne, or include tailored images designed to trigger the killer's specific past memories. This tactic effectively turns the killer's own predatory victimology against them. By simulating the sights and smells of their previous crimes, investigators trick the killer's subconscious into engaging with the correspondence. To catch or understand a savage, law enforcement cannot rely on standard police work. They must temporarily descend into a dark, ruleless world and mirror the twisted desires of the killers they are hunting. This work takes a profound philosophical toll on investigators. As the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche famously warned, Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. When you look into the abyss looks into you. The bleak clinical truth underlying all of this research is that psychopathy and extreme savagery are permanently untreatable. There is no therapy or rehabilitation program that can instill empathy into a mind that physically lacks it. The ultimate goal of mapping these minds is not to fix them. It is to build behavioral predictive models, allowing law enforcement to catch the next predator before they escalate their crimes. While only a tiny fraction of that 1% ever becomes violent, the same traits, glibness, lack of remorse, and a need for total control, drive many more into positions of everyday influence. You may never meet a serial killer, but because these traits are statistically distributed across the population, you are likely to encounter these same narcissistic patterns in a toxic workplace or an abusive relationship. You can protect yourself by watching for specific, everyday red flags. Pay close attention to people who demand unreasonable control over you, those who engage in blatant pathological lying to save face, and individuals who display an eerie, callous lack of empathy for others. Because you cannot cure or fix these individuals, there is no value in trying to appeal to their better nature. When you spot the mask slipping, the only winning move is to turn away, set hard boundaries, and completely disengage.